Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Transformed and Renewed. This is our first episode of the year, so we are back at it. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about sugar. Before I finish that, if this is your first time checking us out, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button on your screen. So make sure that you follow us at ROBODY 1212. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. This way you can get the latest updates and you can stay just informed about the things that we're doing here with ROBODY. So as I was saying earlier, we're going to be talking about sugar, and this is going to be a two-part series. So, in this first part, we're going to essentially lay the foundation in terms of understanding what is sugar and just understanding some basics with sugar, the types of sugar that we're referring to. The second part, we're going to get into more research as it relates to sugar, understanding how much sugar do you need, again related to the different types. Is there too much sugar or such thing as too much sugar? Are there consequences of over consuming when it comes to sugar? These are just some of the questions, followed by a couple of more questions that we will ask as well as dive into and hopefully answer in the second part. So, in this first part, like I said, we're going to be talking about what is sugar. So, if you were to ask me, what is sugar or anyone else, I want you to keep in mind that there are different types of sugar. Sugar is just a generic term for a different classes of sugar. So you have monosaccharides, you have disaccharides, and then you have polysaccharide. Now they can be plural, but typically it's usually in the singular. So you have monosaccharide, disaccharide, or polysaccharide. Again, they can be singular or plural. With monosaccharide, you're going to have sugars that are composed of glucose, fructose, and galactose. With disaccharide, you're going to have sucrose, lactose, and maltose. With polysaccharides, you have starch, think about cellulose, glycogen, etc. So that is pretty much in its simplest form. If you ever forget that form, you think about monosaccharide in terms of a single unit. Disaccharide is going to be two monosaccharide or monosaccharides. When you think about polysaccharide, it's going to be more than two monosaccharides. Okay. So when you have di and poly, it's just a difference between two and more than two with those. Now, again, when we think about sugar, you have, again, the simple, which is mono, simple sugars or simple carbohydrates, and then you have complex sugars or complex carbohydrates. And so these are typically two classes. Like I said, with the complex, you're going to have disaccharides, and then you're going to have polysaccharides that fit into the complex carbohydrates. But with the simple sugars, that's going to be your monosaccharides. Now you may also be asking, okay, I get that in terms of the technical language, but again, what is essentially that sugar? How does it translate to what I have in my kitchen cabinet? So when you think about simple sugar, you can think about cane sugar, like sugar that you get from the store, brown sugar. This could also be maple syrup. I want to say honey is also included in that because these are pretty much broken down into, again, the simplest state or monosaccharides, which means that your body is not going to break them down further because they're already broken down. Now, when we switch over to complex carbohydrates, you can think about fruits and vegetables, whole grain, brown rice, but typically it's going to be in the complex form, which means that it's going to take some time for your body to break these down and compared to the monosaccharides. And that's again just because of the chemical structure of each of these molecules. So again, when you have fruit, you also have the skin of the fruit, then you have the flesh or the pomace of the fruit. And so breaking that down, the skin and then the flesh, that could take some time. So you can imagine that Again, when you're dealing with monosaccharide or simple sugars, as soon as you consume it, it doesn't take long for it to break down. Now, on the flip side, like I said, with the disaccharide or the polysaccharide, it takes it some time. But how much time does it take? I can't really tell you just because I will have to do some research, and that can also be what we discover in the part two in terms of what is a typical time or how long does it take the body to break down complex carbohydrates, which could also be well, I won't say complicated, but depending on how many other foods that you're consuming with those fruits and vegetables in terms of a typical digestion time. So that is hopefully some basics about sugar itself. Again, as we kind of dive into it, at least in the second part, we'll get more into the research in terms of is there a concern with consuming too much sugar? Some people say yes, some people say no, it just depends in moderation. Then we say moderation. What is the meaning of moderation? Because each person may view it differently. So that's something that we'll also explore and help you with. Then there's also a question of, well, if I am consuming sugar moderately, does it cause health issues long term? Let's say I may not consume it every week, but let's say I'm starting to notice some issues. Can it cause health issues? That is something that we'll also unpack to give you more clarity about. And so that is something that hopefully you are excited about because I am too. I know that, at least for myself, hearing about sugar as well as taking an interest in the complexity of sugar consumption among humans and just seeing the different trends, as well as how sugar is just incorporated in a lot of foods. It's going to be something that we dive into in this one, actually. So a little bit of here and then in the next session, we'll actually dive into some more in terms of how sugar is incorporated into a lot of foods that we consume. But if you were to go into your kitchen cabinet, pantry, wherever you keep your food, you likely may have some foods that have added sugar or they just contain sugars themselves. And one way you can do this is just looking on the nutrition label. Usually, if you have a box container, it's going to be on the side. Sometimes it can be on the bottom of a package if you have a bag or something of that nature. But usually, you're going to have a list of just numbers, numerical values, as well as like text. So it may say calories, fat, carbohydrates, fiber, protein, before protein, sugar, and then below it may list about four vitamins. Sometimes, if it has more than those four vitamins and minerals, it will show you a long panel that is separate, or it may show it along or below the nutrition facts label. But on that nutrition facts label, it will likely have sugar content. And what is added is added sugar. So you have your total carbohydrates, and then you have sugars, and then you have added sugars. Typically, the verbiage is usually the same across different packages or different brands. Some brands may have it slightly different, but for the most part, it should say added sugar. Okay, so that way, if you look at it, and if you're trying to monitor your sugar intake, that is one way that you can do it. Now, I don't have it pulled up here, but in the next session, I'll actually share a reference with you that you can actually use. It's a guide that you can use in terms of knowing how much sugar you could or you should consume, or at least not try to overconsume. I will put it that way. Again, it's a guide. It doesn't mean that you have to follow it to the T or exactly, but it's meant to at least help you with, at least to me, I would say there are some areas that you could actually eat more of that will be beneficial for your body without causing a significant caloric intake or any areas such as additional fat or added sugar to your diet. So there are some areas that You could add more to some areas that you want to follow as it shows, or you can at least go lower than what they may list in terms of a recommended range. So again, when it comes to sugar, have three different types. Two of those types fall within the same complex class, and then one falls into the simple complex, and that is monosaccharides. So you have monosaccharides, you have disaccharides, and then you have polysaccharides. Your mono, again, is going to be just a single unit of sugar. And then your disaccharides is going to be two monosaccharides. Your polysaccharides is essentially going to be more than two monosaccharides. Okay. And so, again, when we think about it, polysaccharide and disaccharides are considered complex carbohydrates just because they contain more than one monosaccharide, which means it also takes the body a little bit more work to break these down, okay, in order for them to be absorbed by the body, okay. So, again, that's just some foundational basics to understand about sugar, different types of sugar when it comes to monosaccharide, white sugar, cane sugar, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup. I think that's pretty much it. And then when it comes to disaccharide, you have sucrose, lactose, maltose. So these again are going to be two monosaccharide units combined. And then you have polysaccharides, and these are essentially long chain monosaccharides. So you think about starch from like different rices, think about bread, that's essentially starch. You have cellulose, you have glycogen. These are again examples of polysaccharides. Okay. So next session, we are going to get into more information. Again, we're going to be talking about sugar. Is it really bad for your body? How much sugar should you be intaking? As well as, are there some consequences of eating too much sugar? Are there any health issues with eating too much sugar? This is what we're going to unpack in the next session. So, again, with this brief one, if you enjoyed it, if it jogged your memory a bit, or if you just learned some new information that you thought you knew but you didn't, feel free to give us a like and make sure that you subscribe to our page at ROBODY 1212. Listen, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so that we can stay in the know, okay? In the know of what we are going to be doing, right? So once you hit that like and subscribe button, listen, you're doing big things, all right? So until next time, we'll get into the second part of this. So make sure that you tune in to us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, okay? Make sure you do that. And I look forward to seeing you next time.